Well, as I mentioned previously, one thing, when you sit down and you look at a program like this, you establish a process. And when you do any type of long-term maintenance, you list what needs to be fixed. Now, in order to know what you need to get fixed, you got to know what you need to get fixed. So you put it on this list. And the way I envision working this is that you take this list and you sit down with the commissioners and you sit down with the money that's allocated to that particular project. And then what you do is you typically, based on the money that you have, you cut a line. And you've heard the expression above the line, below the line. The ones above the line, you have the money to fix and you start to work on immediately. The stuff below the line, what you do is you have the capability to either reprogram into next year, or you go find additional resources outside of the county budget to repair those. But the key is the process is going to be open, the process is going to be defined, and the process will be observable by the public on how we do things. But I assure you, because of the state of a lot of the roads in Smith County, it's not going to get fixed the first week. But that's my process, and it's always, we'll make that happen. And that's a fight that I'm very well versed in, above the line, below the line on priorities, because of military construction and stuff like that. So that's my intent. Now, I also mentioned earlier about the possibility of even outsourcing to a third party. Now, that some of the advantages of that is you outsource some of that work to a third party, you can't reprogram that money. You obligate that money, you have to give that money to that individual to make those processes happen. But the aspect of it is it needs to be an active, dynamic process, and that doesn't seem to happen today.
In your opening, you referred to the unemployment stats. Don't you think that the comparison between the employed and the pool of people employment age includes those of us who are older but available is a better metric?
Read that one more time to me, Patty.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
When you were referring to unemployment stats, don't you think that the comparison between the employed and the pool of people of employment age, including those who are older but available, is a better metric?
Well, in assessing the metrics for unemployment, I mean, you could roll in a few other metrics into that aspect too, such as underemployment, people who are more qualified than the job that they're in, particularly. And it's not necessarily the metric that's at hand. It's the idea of the fact that, for example, in the veterans community, the unemployment rate, depending on what poll you use nationally, is somewhere between about 6% to about 9%. Now, the unemployment rate for the veterans is about twice that. Now, the bottom line when you deal with unemployment, it's not so much the worry about the metrics that issues unemployment. It's the act of not addressing unemployment, but addressing the expansion of the economy to where you have a growing economy with opportunities for people to select a job that they participate in and be satisfied in the job that they participate in. And whether individuals, it's really kind of a swirl that you got to be careful with when you're talking about age, because you have people that are in the workforce that contribute at the age of 77. And you have people that have left the workforce at the age of 65, and now that they're 2 years at the house, they've done all the honeydews that they want to do, and they want to get back into the job aspect of it. They do. Like, for example, just this week, there's an individual that's working on their doctorate degree, and they're in their 90s. Now, I'm sure they're going to do more, so age is kind of irrelevant at this stage of defining metrics. To me, the unemployment rate is, we need to grow this economy 25%. You grow this economy 25%, you work and expand the capability and partner as government with small business, you don't have a discussion of unemployment in determining what metrics you're going to use. You have the opportunities and the capability to address the needs that are out there. So I'm not I guess it's my East Texas upbringing coming through, but I don't sink in or soul on any particular metric, other than the fact that we need to continue to expand and not allow government to impede our small business.
What does government transparency mean to you, and what do you mean about personal accountability?
Let me answer the second one first. Personal accountability. The aspect of leadership is lead by example. I'm not going to tell you to do what I say and not as I do. My life has been a public disclosure because of the security clearances that I've had through my military career. And because of that, you learn to live and you develop the character and the leadership that you're going to do the right thing regardless of whether somebody's watching you or not. That's the type of individual and the character and integrity and ethics that I have. Now, in that mind of doing what's right, the only thing that I fear is the Lord. And I say in jest, my wife sometimes. But the fact of it is that personal accountability, we live within our means in the Furlow household. The only debt that we have is we're paying on our house. We own everything else. When we sit down and decide what we're going to do, we determine what the impact to our personal budget is before we go out and buy that. As a result, we don't have second homes and third homes and boats that sit and, you know, I do have a tractor, but it's paid off. But the fact of it is I lead by example. I'm not going to ask anybody in the county to do anything that I'm not doing myself. Now, as far as the transparency is one of those high-level, graduate-level words that means that it's going to be out there in front of you. You're going to see it, observe it in the public domain. You're going to be able to see the actual process move from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4. And you're going to have an opportunity to ask why. Why is this? Now, you may not agree with the why, but you're going to have the opportunity to see and ask the question why. To me, that's transparency. That's transparency. Now, the transparency a lot of times in politics right now is we're going to tell you the good, but we're not going to tell you the bad. Now, let me tell you what that means to us as Texas citizens. That means that the $30 billion of debt that we have was taken off of the table when we figured the last state budget and the last spending in this last session. So we had 26% increase in spending in the last session. That's not transparency. That's almost dishonesty and unethical. You're not going to see that from me. You're not going to see that from me. And in that aspect of leading by example, if I'm up at Lowe's, which I'm up at Lowe's quite a bit, getting things, matter of fact, I got to make a trip to Lowe's this afternoon to get some ortho for Jack and some caulk for me to do some work on Sunday evening. But the fact of it is, if you see me and you got a question, come over and ask me. That's transparency. I'm not going to tell you to put it into a triplicate form and send it to my secretary, and my people will hook up with your people, and we'll set up a meeting and we'll discuss it, and I'll put together a blue ribbon committee, and we'll figure something out. That's not the way I work. What you see is what you get. What you see is what you get. I learned a long time ago, bad news doesn't get better with time. And if you have some bad news, I'm going to tell you. But the aspect behind it is I'm going to help, and we're going to come up with courses of action to solve and address those bad news. But our politicians today, they run like they're running for sophomore class president on popularity of team spirit and terms like that and nice feely stuff. I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. I'm going to tell you when good is good and bad is bad. And that's the transparency and the personal accountability that I live under on a daily basis. Because I assure you, my belief structure, I believe that one day I'm going to be held accountable for everything I do or I don't do. I'm going to stand in the position of prayer, rest in front of the Lord, and He's going to go over issues and address some of the things that I did, and a lot of the times the things you didn't do, and the opportunity to make a difference in the environment and the capability that where you were put at, you're going to be judged. And I live by that faith. I live by that faith. But I wanted, along that lines, one of the things that I made a comment earlier, that I'm not a career politician. I'm not motivated by money. Those of you people around me, I'm not motivated by money. I'm motivated by helping people and making things better, not only for the people that are around me today, but the people that are coming down the road, down to my grandchildren and your grandchildren and so forth like that. That's what I'm concerned about, making a difference, that this country continues to survive and remains a viability in the world, because let me tell you, having been on every continent of the world, we're the best thing going in the world.
Please talk about your battle with Governor Perry and his persecution of you because you aren't a yes man.
Oh, thanks, Patty. I'm in a lawsuit against the governor. Too many times today, and you've seen it, when something goes bad for a politician, or they're not in a particular political situation that they desire, they'll blame the military. They'll fire a general officer. You saw 2 4-star generals fired after Benghazi. Didn't make the news. 2 4-star generals because of a failed foreign policy execution plan. That happened to me. But the aspect was, I happened to be in a Title 32 status rather than a Title 10 status. If I'd been in Title 10 status, I couldn't have done anything. I was in Title 32 status, so I filed a countersuit and took the governor to court. He's in court now with me. That's what I said. I don't fear anything but the Lord. I believe in what's doing is what's right. I'm very open about that situation. And since that point, the governor's asked people to shred evidence. Meanwhile, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not a Perry guy. I'll just tell you straight up. He's asked evidence to be shredded. Information's been hid. You know, he's postponed things, refused to ask questions, and the tenet of our judicial system has been cheapened by his political gain. And in the end, I'm going to prevail. And I hope to take a chunk of his money. Because I'm going to take that money and bring it back here to Smith County and put it to good work. But it's all out there. As I said, my life is a public disclosure. And it's any question that you have about my personal life, I mean, I'm willing to visit with you about it. Now, I warn you though, don't ask me about history, because we're going to be there a while.
He's great talking about history. Could you please explain the role of the county judge and include your views on emergency management?
Okay, emergency management. The county judge is the emergency manager for the county. The way the jurisdiction works, and I having worked natural disasters, the Katrina, Rita, hurricanes, tornadoes, flood, flash, fires, of any type of notable type of natural disaster I've been involved in. People don't realize after Hurricane Rita that followed on Hurricane Katrina, it hit our grid system, which by the way is very fragile, and knocked out an electrical grid about the size of New Jersey. And we were instrumental in getting that back up. It took us about a week to be able to do that. The county judge is the emergency manager. Is that you have to be trained in understanding emergency management. I have the training, I have the experience, but more importantly, the national response plan is very specific on how the cascade works. And it's a bottom-up jurisdiction. The county judge typically signs compacts with surrounding counties that if one county can't get something done, they can ask help from another county and they can get it solved, because you want to solve an issue at the lowest level, because not only is it most cost effective, but it's more efficient in resource usage. And only then that when you cannot accomplish something, you ask for help from higher. As the county judge, we will have a working emergency management system. Matter of fact, I've been working with George Stevenson on Citizens Task Force about increasing the awareness of the individuals here and helping the first responders so they can be more prepared to respond to natural disasters, because a lot of the problems on a response is the first responders are not prepared themselves, and they get involved in the engagement area and they don't show up. They don't show up. So that's the education and training side of the house. So the jurisdiction aspect of it, the county judge has the jurisdiction of the emergency management in Smith County. That's irregardless of the governor sending National Guard into his county. Those guardsmen work for the county judge. Having been on the other side and worked with county judges down in the Beaumont area during the flooding time from there, working with those judges in that particular area, it is understood, and I will hold the line and not allow any outside jurisdiction, whether that be state or federal, to come in and dictate what's going on in Smith County. And that's the second part of emergency management. And a lot of people don't know that. Let me tell you how well it works. And I tell this story, some of you folks who did. The governor of Florida at the time, his name was Bush. The president of the White House at that time was named Bush. Right after Katrina, the federal folks on Title X wanted to put troops into Florida, uninvited. Well, the governor of Florida told the president of the United States that if you send federal troops to this state, they will be arrested upon sight. Now, I think that adds a little dynamics to the family reunion, but the aspect of it, I know it works, and I know it works firsthand because I'm the poor schmuck in the state of Texas under Hurricane Rita because the governor was a weak-kneed invertebrate at that time and said, Furlow, get in there and tell the president we don't want any of his troops, the federal troops, to come in here and do the emergency management. So I was the guy that went in and told President Bush under Hurricane Rita that we don't need your soldiers. And I'll do the same thing in Smith County. And because of that, I'll have an assessment, involvement, and a trained and efficient emergency management plan that will be easily implemented in conjunction with the sheriff and some of the other agencies that already exist in the county, to where we will not be overran by any other jurisdiction.
I'm so glad you were able to tell that story. I love it. If I come before your court and stand before you and speak the truth, will you threaten me with contempt of court the way the current judge did in 2012? That was not me, John.
The answer is no. The answer is no. I won't. I don't play that way. At a minimum, I wasn't sure what the question was leading to, because one of the side functions of the county judge is to commit people to insane asylums. And so, but the aspect behind it of it is, if you come and you take the time to come down to Commissioner's Court, I welcome your input. I welcome you to say things. And if it becomes a spirited discussion, then what we do is we'll table it, because obviously if it's at a stage of a spirited discussion, then all the aspects have not been smoothed out, and there needs to be some more work done on that particular issue, and I welcome that at that time. And like I said, in my career and who I am, I don't surround myself with yes men, and I totally do not expect people to be yes men. I expect to hear dissenting comments and opinions. I expect people to bring to me issues that may not be in conjunction or parallel to what I was thinking at that particular time, but that's an aspect of leadership. When you tell a person that you're going to hold them in contempt of court, that's a leadership issue. That's a power abuse.
I cringed when I heard you say government needs to be a partner to local business. History shows such partnership usually favors one business over another, crony capitalism. Shouldn't government be neutral?
the intent of the partnership with business is that government should not be adversarial and an obstacle to local business. Give an example. I just had lunch with a local business owner that had a problem with business. Is that a restaurant owner, I could give you his name, had a problem with business because the local government was restricting him from being able to practice what he did. And he wasn't sure why he was being singled out, and it was costing him about $18,000 a day in gross revenues. That's what I'm talking about. Is government should not create an environment where they create so many obstacles and set you up for failure. When in reality, government's role, and it may be construed as being neutral, I don't see it as neutral. I say that what you're doing as government, you're running interference, so the environment locally is shaped for success for local business to not only start new local businesses and be successful, and also be able to expand local businesses so we can hire more people. And we in the roundtable have done that over the last couple of years. We've energized the Small Business Administration, better BBB, into helping businesses to get better and be able to move ahead and expand the economy, as I said before. So I think that government does not need to be involved in businesses. They don't need to be dictators of business. But what they do need to do is they need to run the interference and shape the environment so local businesses can be successful.
Do you support local property taxes going to the state project called Toll 49?
No.
And then I have a comment that says, keep our money for the county roads and none to the state for Highway 49. Can you elaborate how the budget process will work, as in workshops with elected officials and department heads and other commissioners, or just you and the auditor?
Well, it won't be me and the auditor. This is the way I've done budgets in the past, and this is the way I'm going to do it in the future. In other words, what you do is you have your overall department list. You sit down with the department head, and I'm talking about the zero-based budget. Last year, say for example, they had $2 million in their budget. You sit and you talk with them and visit with them, and included in that talk are individuals, the commissioners, and I don't know anybody else that really needs to be in there. The auditor, the county auditor is a support position. The county auditor is not a leadership position. The commissioners are leadership positions. The leaders will sit down and have an adult conversation about that budget, about where they're at. Prior to that time, the guidance will be put out by me is that they need to look over the next 12 to 36 months on expenditures that they anticipate occurring. Again, going back to that strategic long-term business plan. And you have that strategic long-term business plan sitting here. You sit down with that department head and you do what we used to call a hot wash, where you go through the budget from top to bottom. That's not the end of the process. Then you go to the next department and you do that hot wash from the first dollar all the way down to the continued budget. And then what you do is you roll up a draft budget. Mind you, this is a straw man from beginning to end. This is nowhere near the conclusion. Unfortunately, now what happens of it is you get the finished product and you get to vote on it, that's it. This is major muscle movements. The budget and direction is one of the key functions of the Commissioner's Court, because once you obligate in that budget, it takes an amended change to that budget in order to move money from one point to the other. But when you move one point to the other, if you do it the way I do, you end up causing a disruption, and you don't know what the other causes may be. So as I'm telling you, I'm describing you a hot dog manufacturing process here. It's not for children, and you don't want to attempt it at home. But the fact of it is that it's going to be out front in front of you, and we're going to start from the budget, start with department heads. And just like, for example, I went and visited with the sheriff yesterday, talked about his needs, how he envisions. He is the leader, the elected leader of that particular department, envisions his department today and where it needs to be 5 years from now. And if you have a leader of a particular department that cannot talk to you in those terms, they need to not be a leader of that department. And that's what we've got. We got too many yes men just rubber stamping this situation. But the fact of it is, the sheriff was able to clearly articulate where he's at today, what his needs are, in anticipating what the needs are coming down the pike as far as the environment coming. Like right now, human trafficking. Strategic intelligence, one of my areas especially. Human trafficking exceeded drug trafficking about 5 years ago. But we have very little, if any, money allocated for human trafficking in this county. Drug trafficking budget has been slashed. Now, why is that? Those are questions that need to come up. And that comes up during the budget process, and that is the focal point of what the Commissioners Court do on an annual basis. It's not to have the meeting on Tuesday mornings at 9:30 and vote. It's to develop the budget, to run effectively, to move the county from this year beginning to the next year and setting it up for success. And I encourage and welcome any of you folks to come watch it. It's not pretty, I'll tell you right off, being a lot of budget roll-ups and a lot of budget discussions, and it'll make your head split open and your eyes roll back, but that's what needs to happen. Isn't that right, Mike? Another good numbers guy.
In the commissioners' meetings, questions are discouraged by the process. Will you add a open mic period, a lineup, and let her fly time so people can publicly air their problems?
Oh, absolutely. Matter of fact, absolutely. The way I describe what's been going on now, those of you folks are old enough to remember Kelly's Heroes. You remember the role that Donald Sutherland had, 8-Ball? You know, he was always worried about the gunner from the tank. You know, the guy played on Love Boat, come in there and telling him about, start telling him bad stuff. And he was saying, well, don't bring me those negative vibes. That was kind of the look that I see down there a lot when people present stuff. No, there's going to be an open mic. There'll be open discussion. Anybody wants to come down and talk, I'll be there all day listening. You know, anybody else want to leave? But that's part of my point of transparency. If you have an issue that you think is worthy enough that you're going to saddle up and come down to the Commissioner's Court, I'm going to listen to what you have. Now, I don't want a Wendy Davis filibuster, but I do want you to have some of your points that are in place.
What is your opinion on no free lunches?
Well, you know, the aspect of it is that we found ourselves in this country here that we got about half of the people working to give the other half a free lunch. And I'm really not for that. And that's why we've worked hard even on the round table to help develop people to get in skill sets through job fairs and helping individuals get to particular success points in their life. Because I don't think that the intentions of our country was to carry a great portion of our citizens on our backs.
I believe this is the last question. You sound like you have other time responsibilities with businesses, veterans, etc. How will time requirement work with being judge? Will you have enough time?
Absolutely. Being judge will be my first priority. In anticipating, one of the things in small business you do is you develop a succession plan. My succession plan is sitting right back over there. I'm training him. My accounting firm is going to stay open. I've altered my client acceptance, especially in the audit area. to where I've ramped it down to where we only have just a couple audit clients at this particular time. And so the accounting firm, it will not be a distractor at that point. But let me tell you about how I work. And I say that in seriousness, is that the being judge and serving you folks will be my top priority. And I have, in my adult life, I have worked extremely hard. And to me, my definition of working a half a day is 12 hours. And I think that sometimes eating and sleeping is a sign of weakness. But I assure you that you in the job will be first. And I've set my personal life up to do that also. Now, the veterans issue of it is the way the veterans movement or the veterans addressing goes along with my leadership style. It's not an authoritative micromanagement type deal. It's kind of like when you go out and you start a brush fire. You start a little brush fire here, you start a brush fire here, you start a brush fire here. But one of the things you do along that line is that you coach and mentor, and that's something we don't do real good anymore in this country, is coach and mentor. And a lot of the success I'm at now is because of people that took time out and saw in me things that I didn't see in myself. And so in that aspect of those little brush fires that I was able to accomplish, the coaching and mentoring, it's running on its own. Matter of fact, I could leave now the veterans organization, and people like Holly and Jim Snow and Shirley and Jack and Gretchen and people like that will ensure that the success is continued without me, because of the coaching and mentoring and starting those little fires and getting out of the way. And that's one of the aspects of leadership too many people do, is they start the engine running and then they want to hold the engine back. My aspect is not holding the engine back, it's get out of the way. So my role in the veterans aspect, of course, being judge, I'd still be able to do that because you have the Veteran Service Office. Veteran Service Office down there under Toby Clemens saw 13,000 veterans on an annual basis. Under the current office holder, they took the money away from the budget and busted its certification and took that right away. And if it wasn't for the green zone to provide the benefits for the veterans, they would not have had a voice in Smith County. Would not have had a voice in Smith County. So working with veterans is going to be an incremental aspect, especially since pro-veteran hiring, that will be incorporated into the government, because I think the veteran makes a good employee. Some of those incorporations into working with businesses to help them hire veterans from the government standpoint. So I don't see that being an issue. My wife calls me a workaholic. Jury's still out on that. So, I mean, you guys, as I said, my whole life I've worked for others in the aspect of not necessarily in ownership subordinate, but the aspect that I've always served others as a servant leader. And that's what it's all about. And regardless of the level that I was at in my positions, is that when you get up higher on the totem pole, that means your service responsibility and expectation is larger and more important. And if you spend 5 minutes with me, you'll know that. You'll know that. It's very rarely about me. It's always about trying to help other people. Any no more questions, Patty? All right.
Great job.
Thank you. Now, candidates, anybody?